Hey, what's up YouTube? Down the smartphone guy coming back at you with another video, and today I'm excited to bring to you my full review of this device right here. This is the ZTE Blade Z Max. So as you can see, it's available on MetroPCS for $129, at least at the moment. Prices may change based on when you're looking at this video, but for now the price is $129 and it's currently only available on MetroPCS. So this is a direct follow-up to the very popular ZTE Blade Z Max Pro, or sorry, just the ZMax Pro. And that was a fantastic device. Kind of changed or revolutionized what I think a budget phone could be. And this is a good follow-up to that device. So let's go ahead and talk about what all this thing has to offer. So we have, of course, 4G LTE. We have Android. It's running Android 7.1.1 out of the box. We have a 6-inch full HD display with 2.5D glass. That simply just means that the glass is curved. Now notice here that it says Dragon Tail glass. That is the scratch resistance kind of glass that they have on there, which I'll say is not the greatest scratch resistance. It's certainly not as good as Corning Gorilla Glass, but at least there is some kind of scratch resistance there. We have, and this is one of the new features, we have a 16 megapixel and 2 megapixel camera on the rear with autofocus and LED flash. We have an 8 megapixel front facing camera, so that's that one right there. We have 32 gigs of onboard storage and 2 gigs of RAM, so that's similar to last year. Now, we do actually have a Snapdragon 400 series processor in this one, so that's clocked at 1.4 gigahertz. That's an octa-core processor, whereas last year you had the Snapdragon 617, but on Geekbench and really pretty much any benchmark scores, you're going to find out that they're really about the same, even though the other one, the ZMax Pro, had a 617 in it, and this one has a 400 series. They actually clock out at about the same performance. So you can expect whatever performance you got on your ZMax Pro. If you're looking at getting this or switching to this, you will notice that it's probably not going to be a huge difference between that device and this device. So let's go ahead and talk about the build quality of this. So one thing you'll notice right away is that the phone, in terms of the actual build, is very similar to last year's ZMax Pro. So this is the Blade X Max. This is the one for cricket, kind of a similar device to the ZMax Pro, almost the same build but with a different back. But you can see that this one is actually slightly thinner. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it is just slightly thinner than this one here. But the interesting thing is that this one actually has a much larger battery. This has a 4080 milliamp hour battery, whereas I believe this one only has a 3400 milliamp hour battery. You can see this one has a slick back to it, which, you know, it is what it is. Almost looks like it could be glass, but it's not. It's plastic. Whereas this one has a much more grippy, textured back, and I definitely prefer this one, hands down. There's no question about it. This one almost makes you feel like you don't even need a case for the phone. Now, I would get a screen protector, but I mean, unless you're really worried about dropping your phone, the backing on this phone just feels fantastic. I really like that. That's a huge thumbs up to ZTE. I would say keep going with this. I know some people didn't really like the similar back that it had on the Blade V8 Pro, but I definitely like this backing. Now, it is still plastic on the sides. We still have the buttons here in the same position. Up on the top, still plastic. There's a microphone up there as well. There's our SIM tray, which does also double as a micro SD expansion slot there. We do have a headphone jack, another microphone, and Type-C for charging. So another big thumbs up to ZTE with that Type-C. So they're kind of leading the curve on Type-C. A lot of budget phones don't come with it. This one does, so that's nice. So build quality, we have another 1080p display. So right now I'm actually running not the stock launcher, so I should probably run it back to the stock launcher. So this is the stock launcher that comes on. So we have a back button, a home button, and a recent apps button. Now you can actually reverse those two, but obviously the home button cannot be reversed in the software. But in terms of the display, again, a beautiful display. This one actually feels like it's not quite as bright as the ZMax Pro, so I don't know if you can tell if I bring it up on the Blade X Max, because this one has the same display as the ZMax Pro. So let's see. Whoops. Let's go ahead and bring that up. Okay. So I don't know if you can really tell the difference, but for me, the Blade X Max just has a slightly brighter screen, and I'm not exactly sure why. They probably are the same one, but for me, this one just seems a little bit dimmer, but still a very good screen. In terms of performance, I kind of already mentioned the performance. If you're familiar with the ZMax Pro, this has a very similar performance, and on Geekbench scores, and really just about any score you're going to look at, it scores right around the same for single core and multi-core scores. So I get a multi-core score of 2607 and a single core score of 678. So that 2 gigs of RAM coupled with that 1.4 gigahertz processor, for me, it performs fairly well in social media. Like if I were to go into Facebook and Twitter and things like that, you will definitely see just a little stutter. It's certainly not as fast as something like this. This is the Note 8. But it's still, it holds its own in terms of gaming. It does okay with lighter games, but certainly not heavier games. If you are somebody who plays, like you can see the games that I play, Beach Buggy Racing, NBA Jam, Hill Climb 2, nothing super fancy. It can handle some more graphic intensive games, so I did play Asphalt 8 on it just to test it, and it did do okay with that one. It does drop some frames from every now and again, but it is still very playable. Obviously not going to get the same kind of experience that you're going to get on something like the Note 8, but still the experience overall is not too bad. So in terms of performance, certainly not flagship performance. So it's definitely not going to compete with something like this. And one other thing I'll just kind of compare here. So this is a 6.4-inch display versus the 6-inch display on the Blade Z Max here. So the height-wise, they're about the same. Width-wise, definitely the Note 8 is a little bit thinner. But obviously the screen on this one is a lot more narrow. And, I kind of prefer this kind of screen personally. But obviously you can get a lot more screen when you have that almost like bezel-less design like the Note 8. So who knows, maybe ZTE has something up their sleeve soon when it comes to bezel-less phones, but for now we have just really nice budget phones with very large displays, and I'm okay with that. I really like this display. So next thing I want to talk about, so performance is pretty good. In terms of cameras, so this is a pretty cool feature. So we have a 16 megapixel camera and a 2 megapixel camera. And of course we have that dual focus here, so we can do the bokeh effect, we can do the portrait mode. And they kind of give you an idea of what those different effects do. So the bokeh will actually make it so that it focuses on one particular area. So if I come in here and I pick that one, and we take a picture of, let's say, this charger here, so I actually can pick where it focuses, and then I can change after, well, I'd have to go into the picture over here, and I can actually change how much it blurs out the background. So you can see here that it does a good job of blurring out the background, but I can actually change that here and adjust how much I blur out the background. So right now it's at f2.0, and I can turn it f1.0 and it blurs it out even more. So notice some other things got a little bit more blurry in the background. Or I can go over here to f.8 and notice everything comes back into focus. So pretty cool feature. So that bokeh effect, oh, gallery app, I don't think I've ever had that happen before. So that's what that one does. Then back into the dual mode, so then we have the portrait, which I'll show some examples of that. Essentially it does the same thing that you would get with the bokeh, only now it's going to focus on whatever's in the foreground, not necessarily just whatever you pick. And then we have monocolor, which of course is going to focus on one color. So if you take a picture of something like this, and I can focus on blue, and we'll take a picture of the MetroPCS, go back in here to my gallery now. Did I actually take a picture? Let's see. Nope, I didn't. Let's try again. All right, so let's take a picture of the MetroPCS box here. And I have it focused on blue. And now we'll come in here. And it's kind of being slow about it. So you can see kind of the sluggishness a little bit there. So notice only the blue comes in color now. This is mostly just a blue picture, but notice on the actual box we have some colors there, but notice on here it's just pretty much focusing on the blue. So that's what the monocolor will do. But overall, I'm going to throw up a lot of pictures at the end of this, so if you want a better idea of what the pictures look like with this camera, you definitely get some decent pictures, but certainly, again, we're not going to get flagship pictures. I actually took that exact same picture with the Note 8, and clearly the Note 8 was the winner. It actually could see the blue in the background here, whereas this wouldn't get that. Obviously, more detail in the Note 8, but again, we're talking about $930 phone versus a $130 phone. So this is a portrait mode picture, so you can see that it obviously keeps focus on my daughter here, but then it blurs out that background, so does a good job of that. Now, there are some times when it's a little bit spotty, so notice like in this picture with the portrait mode, see how her hand got blurred out. So there definitely can be some improvements in terms of the software with the portrait mode, and part of that could be just, you know, my picture taking quality, but you can see again her hand is kind of blurred out because it was in the background a little bit too far, and so the software didn't do a good job of picking that up, but overall still pretty decent picture quality. Again, with this being a $130 phone, if you're taking some pictures in the dark, it's not going to do as well as some more expensive phones, but still a decent job. And then in terms of the video, we do not have any kind of stabilization with the video, but we can shoot in up to 1080p. So 1080p is our max resolution, up to 720p. But decent video quality, but again, there's no stabilization, so if you're moving around, you're not going to get any kind of stabilization with it. So next thing I want to talk about is the software. So you can see obviously I'm running Nova Launcher, but the actual stock software really isn't too bad. Again, it's running Android 7.1.1. It's almost stock. Really, there's not a whole lot of tweaks to stock Android on this. There are just a few software tweaks in here, so if I go up here into the settings, there's just a couple in here, I believe in the security. There's a couple things you can do with the fingerprint sensor, if I can actually find it. But for the most part, you're pretty much looking at stock Android with just some very, very minor tweaks. Now, out of the box, I didn't mention this, but you can see that with 108 apps installed, I currently have a little over 12.5 gigs remaining of that storage, because about 10 is being used out of the box. So you're getting about 22 is what you're actually going to get out of the box. Now, I'm about to get a notification from my wife probably here in just a second, because I just saw it pop up on my Note 8, but we'll see. There it is. All right. But yeah, so stock software here. So huge thumbs up to ZTE for that. I'm a big fan of their software, but I just prefer Nova Launcher on any phone that I'm using. So the last thing I want to talk about is the speaker. So let's go ahead and jump into YouTube here for some music. And so this just has that single rear firing speaker. Obviously, whoa.
Tap here, then there.
There you go. I apparently hit something. I don't even know what I'm watching now. All right, so let's go front page tech. Apparently, that was the last thing I was watching. All right, so let's go into. You can see I was looking up a video on the Amazfit Pace, the watch that I'm currently wearing. All right, so now let's go into some royalty free music. All right, so my favorite is Cloud9. It usually pops up right away. So let's do Valesco Cloud9. Crank it all the way up. So it gets relatively loud. It's definitely not the loudest speaker by any means, and obviously being rear firing, you can block it. Like if you're playing games, you're probably going to hold your finger over it, and I found that when I was playing some games that I tend to block it. But you know, thankfully they have the headphone jack, and this does actually have Dolby Audio built into it as well. So when you're listening to music, if you want to change some Dolby Audio settings, you can change those right here in that Dolby Audio app. There it is. So you know, at least that is an option. So overall, I definitely think this is a phone easily worth $129. I mean, there is no question to me that this phone is worth $129. And it's really a pretty fantastic offering from ZTE. So this is the ZTE Blade Z Max. Again, you can pick it up on MetroPCS for $130. I hope this review has been helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.